Welcome to the B2B Forum. Thank you guys for traveling to New York. My name's Jay. I'm going to host you throughout the day, throughout the content that we've put together. And we thank you for joining us already. I guess I would ask how many people from out of town traveled from somewhere far away? Yeah. Hopefully there were no bad commuting stories this morning. Everything went smooth. And I would assume so based on the fact that our tables are all pretty full and everybody looks to be here. Hi, Kara. So if we could, why don't we get started? I'd like to ask you guys to do one thing. If you would, put everything down that you currently have in your hands and close your eyes. Take a moment. Just get situated in your seats. I can see if your eyes are open. Trust me, or trust the person next to you, that you can close your eyes and feel comfortable. Think a little bit about your commute this morning. Think about all of the effort that you put in to being here today, to being in the seat that you're in right now. Think about what you're thinking about for today. Like, what's your intention for today? And think about a little bit about work, just for a minute, and then I'm going to ask you to not think about work anymore. But think about the barriers at work. Think about the decisions that you make on a daily basis. What goes into those decisions? What stakeholders are a part of those decisions? The ones that are easy to work with, maybe the ones that aren't so easy to work with. You can probably picture them right now, right? And think about the fact that science and sense are the two things that go into most of the decisions that you make on a daily basis. And how can perfect science not make perfect sense? And how can something really straightforward and intuitive not always line up with the science that maybe you have in front of it at your workplace? So ground your feet, kind of feel your feet on the ground, feel your legs where they're sitting into your chair, and think about the fact that you're with us all day today to try and connect a lot of dots between science and sense. So with that, open your eyes. And I think about that in a couple ways, right? And classically, like from the brain perspective, left brain, right brain, I always get it backwards, but good news, I've got it right today, and that the left side of the brain is the science and the math and the data side, right? And that's the piece that I think makes decisions much easier, right? When the data supports it, when you have science, when you have a slide, and you've got all the things in front of you to help you make a decision, right? I would say intuitively that's pretty straightforward. A lot of people can't argue, especially right with something that's in writing per se. But then the right side of the brain, the creative side, or what I would argue today is the common sense side, the intuitive side, where you know something, but you may not have the data to support it, is the other side, right? So there's this perfect science and this perfect sense that we want to talk about throughout the day today, right? So having science on your side is wonderful, but if you think about some of the leap of faiths that you've had to make in your lifetime, decisions that you've made where you didn't have everything perfectly in line, you had to connect the dots, right? There was a chasm between the science maybe and the sense, and there wasn't really a way to connect the two, but you took that leap of faith. I think back years ago when we were having similar conversations like this at Google, we were telling you that your customers were online. We were telling you that people were consuming their content on the internet. And you're like, oh, I don't know. Maybe the world was like, oh, I don't know. And we had some data to back it up, but intuitively you knew you were on your laptop when we left that meeting. You knew you were researching, you were doing things on the internet, so maybe you took that leap of faith. The next leap of faith to really think about is that our customers aren't just on the internet, but actually they're on really, really small devices a lot of the time, right? And how does that aid exploration? How does that help them find you? And how do you insert yourself into that conversation? I like this framework, right? I think of it's called polarities, right? And think of the polar opposites in anything in life. A classic one would be good versus evil. I can't use my hands that way. Good versus evil, right? It would be maybe short-term versus long-term thinking. In this case, kind of science and sense. So the way to think of it is the middle is exactly the middle. You take your business, your organization, you as an individual are right in the middle of liking a good amount of science, a good amount of sense. That's what helps you make a good decision, right? I think about something like short-term versus long-term thinking. So let's use that as a very similar example to science and sense. So on the top right, it would be all the positives of short-term thinking. So if you're a short-term organization, you're really focused on the now. Up in the top, the positives of that would be probably really good short-term results, right? You make your numbers. I don't know how often you look at them, but it might be daily, might be weekly, might be quarterly. Very short-term focus. The downside, the negative of being a short-term organization is that maybe you miss some big trends, right? Your heads are down. You're so focused on the short term, you don't see the bigger picture. On the right-hand side, let's say that's where the long-term business is and the way of looking at business. The positives of long-term is, wow, we've got a vision. We're 3, 5, 10 years out, and that's what our North Star is, and we're driving toward it. Right? The negative of being a really long-term thinking organization might be that you miss a lot of short-term. You miss some numbers, right? And how do you miss numbers while thinking about a longer-term view? How do you use science and sense together to make decisions? And I think about somebody a long time ago, 500 years ago, had very little science. Very little science, but a ton of sense. And Columbus Day was just last week, right? So how apropos that maybe we talk a little bit about Christopher Columbus and how he and some of the things that he accomplished and is known for today could play into today. So at 15 years old is when he started sailing, right? So really young sailor. Took him to the age of 41 before he actually started being known. And in 1492, when Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue, right? He was 41 years old. He was considered very controversial in his time, right? And kind of out there. Like he had this theory that nobody believed that this earth was round. Crazy, right? He did not have spherical trigonometry. He had a compass. He did not have longitude and latitude. He thought if he went west, he would go around this round earth and end up in Asia. And that's what he was looking for, by the way. His trips were very motivated by economics. They were motivated by silks and spices and things that were in Asia and wanting to bring them. So when I talk about connecting dots, I mean, this was a guy that wanted to connect the two largest dots, right? The hemispheres. And ultimately made some mistakes. So it took him 6 years. If you guys think about your own businesses and making decisions and doing things, like how long does it take to get funding? Well, it took him 6 years. He just about gave up. He was about to go to France and ask them. And then King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella granted him 87 men, 3 ships. Who remembers the names of the 3 ships? Thank you. Yeah, Nina, Pinta, Santa Maria. So this guy leaves at the age of 41 to head west, to go east, to find silk and spices, right? He comes back with a little bit of gold and some trinkets. He leaves with 3 ships, by the way, and you'll notice there are only 2 on the slide, right? He only came back with 2. So the Santa Maria ran aground. Oh, by the way, he went to find India. He ended up in the Bahamas, now known as Cuba, right, etc. So a lot of failure along the way, if you will. But what I'd like to just call learnings, missteps, he truly launched and iterated. Think about it, right? He launched ships. He lost 39 men in the first time. He went back 3 more times. But when you hear his name today, depending on how well you're read on Christopher Columbus, because it can go a number of ways, but for the most part, his legacy is that of finding the New World. Because what he didn't know was that North America was to the right. And that's what he found. So this guy's rocking around. His legacy is that he found the New World, right? He extended trade outside of his current country. And when you think about that 500 years later, my question for you is, kind of what is your legacy in your business? You know, how are you breaking barriers and finding new worlds? You know, going to work every day, doing the things that we do on a daily basis. You know, how many things are just set and you're like, oh, that's the way we do that. That's the way we think about that. What I'd like to give you permission to do today, and we're going to give you a lot of science to back up a lot of this thinking, is to open your minds to this new world, to potentially have a legacy within your own business, right, of that person that found new markets, found the right places to potentially talk to your customers, helped with this leap of faith that the device, we've not just gone from an offline world to an online world, but now we're going from an online world with a 13, a 15, a 17-inch screen to one that's 5 inches, right? And how is that helping? Are our customers there? Are we helping their exploration? So it's a 2 kind of point question, right? One is, we know your customers are exploring, and in a minute we're going to start to show you where. We've invested to share research with you today from not just a mobile perspective, but also from an export perspective to understand the B2B buyer, what's going on abroad, and what's going on regardless where they are, on what device they are. And I think this is where you have to make a decision. You have to think about where you want to insert yourself and start that conversation with your customer. Are you there when they're ready to buy? Are you there when they need help? Are you there when they're curious? And how do you put and connect these dots? because they're not always going to connect perfectly. I'm afraid to say that by the end of the day, we don't have kind of this perfectly executed mousetrap or plan that says, boom, this is what you need to do. And it's this simple. It's hard. I think back to Christopher Columbus and think about how hard that was. He had a vision, right? He had a little bit of science, but he had a lot of sense that this was going on out there. I'm hoping that by the end of our time together today, you're in a place, and I'm going to ask you that question around 3:30, right? Where are you at that point with being able to go back to your organization and your company and put what you've learned today in place, and ultimately asking us for that help? Because if nothing else, we want to be an accelerant. We want to be a partner. We want to be someone that helps you find these new worlds abroad. We want to be someone that helps you insert yourself into the conversation where your customers are exploring things to help their business. So we love B2B. I'm a big fan. I love export. I love mobile, the things that we're talking about today. A lot of the feedback that we get is that networking is one of the key features of coming to an event like today. So my ask of you guys is, if you're not already at a table with some people that you haven't met, when we have little breaks at lunchtime, et cetera, make some new friends. Talk about their barriers. Talk about your barriers, things that you're grappling with. They might be as well. And use this as a great networking opportunity. We extended our time a little bit this afternoon, so we are going to have aperitifs, et cetera, at 3:30 when the event concludes here in this room. So feel free to mingle, make some new friends, learn some new things. That's our goal for you today, is to help you explore and to feel good about it. So with that, I'd like to introduce my friend and colleague, Mike Miller. I would say if we're Starsky and Hutch, we're peanut butter and jelly, we're salt and pepper. We're B2B, because we are the two representatives at Google of the B2B business. And we love the practice of B2B. We love that you guys are giving us more and more great examples of work when we come up and have these opportunities to be in front of you. My friend and colleague, Mike Miller. Take it away, Mike. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, you get that? Yep. I get that.
I really can't believe you just use salt and pepper as one of the
Come on.
ways of comparing us. Well, welcome, everyone. Jay gave a great kickoff there. As many of you know, over the last 4 or 5 years, we have invested to do B2B research. And we try to bring that to you in various formats. If you recall, 4 years ago, we talked about what Jay mentioned, which is this move online in the B2B space, right? A couple years after that, we talked about the buying path. And we did some work with the corporate executive board to show that people were 57% of the way through the purchase path before they even made contact with a company. Last year, if you remember, we talked a lot about audience, about how the millennials were moving into the workforce, right? A big shift, a 70% shift of millennials coming into the workforce. And so we're going to do the same thing today, is talk you through what we've done from a research standpoint. We did this study in conjunction with Millward Brown Digital, and we've actually got them in the background, or in the room here, sitting in the back. And they've been terrific partners with us throughout the years. I would like to start, one thing that you may not know from my background, I spent 2 years teaching high school to start my career. So I often like to start with a little quiz for you. So we'll see who's awake and on their B2B knowledge to get us going. So first of all, 4 years ago, right, when we started these studies, what was the percentage of B2B buyers that were using the internet? Any guesses? I hear someone muffling 60 in the front here. Close. Any others? How many? 15? No, higher. They were more sophisticated than that. 40 higher. North of 60.
75.
Close. We'll end it there. 71%. So think about that. 4 years ago, roughly about 70% were using the internet in their purchase path. Right? We saw that jump a couple years after that, 90-ish% plus. Let's talk about video. Right? Video was actually a highlight for us last year, where we talked about 70% of B2B buyers were using video in their purchase path. If you go back 4 years, what do you think it was? 10. Very good. Wow. Right on it. 11. Pretty close. So look at that jump just in a short time period. Let's talk about mobile. What do you think mobile was 4 years ago?
5.
How much?
5.
5, little higher.
8.
You can keep going. That's
15 to 20.
like the Price is Right, right? You just want to trump him. How much? Someone in the 20s? Yeah. A little higher, yeah. So 26%, 4 years ago, right? Now, the interesting part on this is that you've heard a lot about mobile. You can't pick up a newspaper without reading something about mobile over that last 4 years. Apple just sold 13 million iPhones in their launch a couple of weeks ago, right? It is all over the place. The only thing is, we had not seen that move into mobile, really, in the B2B space much in the past couple of years. If you remember our study from last year, we saw just a small incremental change in terms of mobile in that B2B buying path. But that is what has really changed this year. So one of the things that we focused on is what is the role of mobile in the buying path? And kind of the headliner for us this year is that well over 80% of B2B buyers in their buying path, right? This is using the Millward Brown digital survey panels, 2 million plus clickstream analysis. We surveyed over 3,000 B2B buyers across 17 categories. 82% of them are using mobile as an anchor device in their buying path, in their multi-screen. So what does that mean? It means that they're using mobile combined with desktop. They're using mobile maybe combined with a tablet. They may even be using mobile combined with TV, right? It's multi-screen. It's using mobile as that anchor device and using it in conjunction with others. So we think that has obviously some significant impact for how we think about marketing. And what we're going to talk about here is let's unravel that a bit to say, how does mobile change some of the overall buyer behavior? First thing that we ask is, when are they using mobile? So about 20% generally start with mobile at the beginning of their purchase path. So the question is, are you thinking about that in terms of how you're reaching your consumers? Right? Is that where your first message is going to hit them, is on a mobile device? 34%, somewhere in the middle. And what this says is it's generally in that time period when they're engaging on a mobile device. 13% at the end of that journey. And then finally, about 40% are using it throughout. Now you'll notice, I know some of you are out there trying to add these up and say, does this equal 100? It doesn't. It's really how the survey is run to get a sense of where people are using it. So you're not going to get it equal to 100 here, but this is to give you a rough sense about where people are using mobile in their journey. Because if it is multi-screen, it doesn't mean that they're linear in terms of the type of device that they're using. They're using this in a very combined way. Well, then you have to ask the question, so how does this affect the overall buying path? So we'll start with desktop here. These are desktop numbers. And the reason that we're doing this is just to give you a lens into some of the differences between desktop and mobile. But keep in mind, this is always combining the two in terms of that purchase path, because 80% of folks are multi-screen. So if you look at a desktop path to purchase, what this is saying is that 18% are starting 1 to 2 months before they make that purchase or engage. So 18% starting 1 to 2 months before they actually go and engage. And engage, as you remember from our studies, is broad, right? That doesn't mean that they're buying always. They could be buying. It may mean that they're downloading a white paper. It may mean that they're hitting your website and looking for more information. It may mean that they're taking some action on your website, right? So it's a broad sense of engagement. But if you look at desktop, it's pretty longitudinal. They're using this very consistently throughout that path. If you insert mobile, it changes dramatically. So interestingly, there's actually a big spike at the beginning, that 1 to 2 month period ahead of time before they engage, 13% using mobile, right, at the beginning of their journey. But the real focus here is the way mobile makes it faster, right? 78% engaging in that last bit, that 1 week to 1 day. 69% hitting 1 day, right, from the start to actually taking that action. So that has a pretty big implication for us as marketers in terms of how we're reaching consumers. And it's no longer is this a very long path that you may get them. There's certainly still some of that. But if they're engaging on mobile, it's making this a much, much faster path to that engagement. So with that as context, let's talk about what that means in some different angles here. So first, we're going to talk about how brand and the discovery process has changed. We'll share some data with you there. We'll talk about the deepening of the research that mobile creates and how it might be different than things on desktop. And then we'll talk about video too, because video is a very big medium that is consumed on mobile, and we'll share some information there. So first, let's talk about the overall discovery process. And again, we're kind of breaking things down in certain areas between desktop and mobile, just to give you a lens about how they change. Just always remember that they intermingle here. So we asked the question, if you're on desktop, how are you starting your searches? And this refers to search referrals. So where are search referrals coming from? Pretty good split here, 42% brand terms or brand queries, 58% on non-brand or category terms. When you go to mobile, index, it shifts in a very big way to things that are category. Right? Think about what you're typing into your phone. Are you going to type in a brand or not? More than likely what the research is showing is that it's going to go towards a category. So take that combined with this very fast path on mobile, and you may have to think about how you're shaping some of those marketing campaigns. Now this doesn't hold in every category, so it's worth it to talk to your account team about what this might look like for your specific category. Keep in mind that this is across all of B2B. And then, what we've seen too is that, as you may have heard Google talk about, we start to see what we call micro moments, right? Mobile is a device or a set of devices that really lends itself to those very fast interactions, right? Some of you might be having a micro moment right now, checking out what happened with the Cubs and Mets last night, or what's happening today in a world event. Some of you might be doing that at a break. Some of you might even be doing it at other points during the day, right? So it changes how we go about that activity of searching or finding information. And what we break this down into are what we're calling moments, right? So here what we did is we took 3 different types of moments in the B2B space to give you some sense of the impact that mobile's having. So this is a general, I want to learn moment. And what you're going to see here, the blue line indicates desktop. The green line indicates mobile queries. We took pretty broad categories here across all of B2B, and we indexed this. So what you can see is that mobile is increasing in a very big way in these I want to learn moments. Now, just know these are indexed, so the blue line is actually still fairly significant. It's not declining in a very big way, and that still accounts for a lot of the volume here. So desktop still is very prevalent. We want to, oftentimes what you hear in the press is that it's all about mobile. B2B space, that's not really the case. We still see very strong growth in desktop. And so we really talk about this as being a combined overall environment. But no doubt that mobile is growing. So what does that mean? We took a sample and we said, these might be moments on how to start a new business, or what are my security needs, or we know we've got folks in the audience on fleet management and fleet tracking, right? How do you strengthen fleet productivity? Those are the type of I want to learn moments. But there are also I want to switch moments, right? What's the other products or category information that's out there? These look a little bit different, right? Increase on desktop, increase on mobile, very strong growth on mobile overall. And these might be queries of what's the best shipping provider? What's the highest quality software? What are the easier systems to integrate? Right? So we ask you, what are the moments that you have within your business, and how are they trending? Finally, there would be some I want to know moments. And this jumped out off in a very big way for mobile, in the sense that even though, again, the blue line is actually still quite high here from a volume standpoint, the growth in I want to know moments has spiked on mobile. So it's that mindset that the B2B buyer is in terms of trying to find out information that you can start to break down and understand what type of device or what their path is across various devices. And these type of moments might be when they're considering a new service provider. How much is it to build a website? How fast is expedited shipping, right? We give that to you as just a sample across a broad set of categories. But the question for you is, what are the moments that you have within your business, and what do they look like in terms of desktop and mobile? The other interesting thing that jumped out at us is that mobile has changed the way people stay connected at work. So you've seen this, you may have seen some of these slides over the past couple years for broad searches, right? where we track the search activity throughout the course of a day, and you see mobile spike. What we saw this year is it's playing out in the B2B space. It never really has before. So this is desktop searches. Follows a pretty traditional path. People arriving at the office between 8:30 and 9, firing up their laptop, getting the coffee, starting their day. Right? And then it starts to trail off about 4:15, 4:30. It goes down into a valley, comes back up as people plug in after dinner. Mobile changes it. So it's very consistent throughout the day. In fact, the highest point on this chart for mobile is 9:30 p.m. People are getting their last bit of information in before the end of the day. So that notion that we hear a lot from you guys that, oh, our customers are at the office, it is a 9 to 5, that's when we see our highest volume, that's shifting. Right? People are on their drive home, unfortunately, using their phone or sneaking in, that quick search while they're sitting at the red light, or doing it on the subway. Right? It has changed. And so the question is, have you adapted your marketing to follow that type of path? We know that some have. I mean, we took a bunch of samples here across different categories. One that we did was just ERP versus CRM, general search. You can see we've got a very different type of auction in mobile during that time of day. Right? Microsoft Workday, Zendesk changes by about 1 o'clock, and then by the time people are thinking that the typical day's over, it's flipped completely. This is very typical across all categories. We actually had a very tough time finding anyone that was the opposite of this, although we did. So I know we've got folks from Webstron in the audience today. You guys are doing a terrific job of staying consistent all the way through the end. But we'd ask you to think about, what does yours look like? Are you following that demand even towards the back end of the day? Because patterns are changing. Now, you might also say, well, what's the point of the activity there? The research also shows that there is a high rate of movement from an ad to taking some form of action, right? So 39% of people, after they see an M search ad, visit the brand's website. That's a pretty good response rate because they're engaged. Mobile is a different type of device, right? When they're engaged, they're purposeful. They're taking action. They want to do it in a day and get it done. So you're going to see that follow through. And we'd ask you just to also contemplate, this is a screenshot of Google Analytics. As you are looking or working with your analytics teams, what are you looking for? Right? Here we're talking, this is just a quick stat from an account that shows mobile being a huge number of new referrals, right? 70% new referrals from mobile, right? And there's other metrics too, to be able to take a look deeper in terms of that path, because it doesn't all come from paid, it comes from organic. Being able to track that down, and just another screenshot of another Google Analytics snapshot that shows mobile and paid search being a very high percentage of those referrals. So we ask that to not whether you're using Google Analytics, could be another provider, but what are you doing to be able to track those paths to purchase and the changes that are happening, because they are happening now. So let's also talk about the deepening of research, right? That second overall category, because the way people are using this in a cross-device manner, it changes the way in which they're researching. So when we look at folks using mobile, they're using it generally, 50% of them are using it for over an hour per week in terms of their researching. That's pretty significant, because most of you are not spending 1 hour in a concentrated way on your device, right? It's usually very small micro moments that you're using this on. So think about that. How much time does it take to consume some content on mobile? Right? Usually like 1 to 2 minutes max. So if you think that they're spending an hour on that device, it means that they're consuming a huge amount of content, right? Just if you did the 1 to 2 minutes per piece of content as a rough guideline, you're talking 30 to 60 different pieces of content that they may be consuming. So how are you reaching them through that type of material? The other part here is that they're doing it in different ways. So, and this is probably intuitive, but what you use your mobile device for is different than what you use your desktop for, right? We see an almost 40% increase in video usage in mobile versus desktop. Again, using that lens of desktop and mobile just to give us a sense of what the differences are. News sites, 30% difference. Social networking, 30% difference. So question for you is, your consumers are now having different moments on a mobile device than they might be on desktop. And are you reaching them during that time period? And keep in mind, this is not, this is B2B buyers, right? This would look perfectly fine if it were B2C, but it is B2B. So their patterns are following what is happening in the overall B2C market. The question is, are you reaching them there, right? The research that we did also showed that display really works in this way, right? Display ads were the most recalled form in the research. So are you using mobile display in that way to reach folks as they're having these new different moments in a mobile world? Now, one thing that we did a survey of folks after they had seen an ad, and we asked them, what did you get out of this ad, right? And this is just to give you some sense of the flavor of content that may be useful for you to use. So 36% said it gave me an offer of some form. 34% said it taught me something new, right? That I want to learn moment that we talked about earlier. And 34% said it was personalized, and that felt good. Now, personalization in mobile can take actually some different forms. So one that we want to show here, we want to roll just a quick video to give you a sense of what Lowe's has done in this space. We know they're more of a consumer brand, but what they're doing here I think applies pretty well in B2B, and we'll talk about it after. So if you don't mind rolling the video. Just pay attention to both screens.
Hooray for summer. Hurry into Lowe's for some sizzling summer savings. Prep your home for the summer season with these featured offers. Click here to view even more products at great prices. And visit us right here at your neighborhood Lowe's store. Lowe's, never stop improving.
It's pretty interesting, pretty quick. If you didn't catch everything in there, 2 different ads, right? One tailored more for a male viewer, one tailored more for a female viewer. Presumably, they're using information about their consumers to inform that, right? It's not just general, here's what a woman would want, here's what a man will want. They're using their research to build that in, but also the location, right? 2 different locations. They're giving them a map at the end that shows them a customized view, right? And mobile obviously enables that with all of the location services that are available. So that is what people are coming to expect when you look at a mobile device. They want that level of personalization. A question for you is, have you started down that path? Are you thinking about that in terms of the personalization that you can offer to people? Because the technology exists to deliver that. Now, display, we talked about the efficacy of search ads. Display holds up the same. It's actually the exact same number, right? 39% clicking through to search for the brand. In this case, they're not visiting a brand site. They might be going and doing new research. We mocked this up just to give you a sense of this, right? There's a Samsung ad. That would drive, 39% are then going and searching more for that. So putting in some keywords that would be related to Samsung. And the interesting part here is that you've now got studies within the AdWords interface that will help you see what that activity is. So in this case, it's a search lift study. And you get a sense. We can track the interest in all keywords related to that. Here it's 8% left. Interest in brand-related keywords, 8.7. Interest in product keywords, 7%. Interest in the keywords associated with the creative message, right? Even a lift on that. There is a lot of information now available to help you get a sense of how that breaks down overall in this increasingly multi-device world that we're living in B2B. And finally, let's talk about video, right? It's a hugely powerful medium. In fact, some of the research that we saw here is that the better your content is in video, in digital, the more it will shape the overall perception of your company, right? People that saw a very strong message and clear message in online video ultimately had a much better perception of your company overall. But it goes deeper than that, right? It's also about understanding what role video plays within the purchase path. So one of the things that we looked at was out of the buyers who used video, we wanted to get a sense of their mindset, right? Because it's not just saying video is great. We wanted to understand what their mindset was as they go into the purchase path. So if you look at a sample of 100 multi-screen users who ultimately use video, the rough breakdown is that 40% or 40 of them, 40%, would be open-minded, right? They're coming into this search or this buying process or their explorer process, not knowing exactly what they're looking for, what brand, what product, et cetera. They might have a rough sense, but they're not loyalists, right? 60% had a brand in mind. They knew what they wanted. So if you take that a step further, we say, well, at least 40 of these folks are influenceable through the process. And if you look a little bit deeper, even the folks that had a brand in mind were influenceable too. So 36 of those 60 said that they were firm, they were going to stay with the brand, but 24 of them were influenceable. So if you total that up, 64% of the B2B buyers who are using multi-screen are ultimately influenceable. And that for us is pretty powerful because it means that you're not just trying to stay with brand here as your key message. You have an opportunity to win them over. And video is a key method or a key platform for being able to do that. Now, what are they looking for, right? Because you have to ask that question also. We've asked this in the past and it stays relatively consistent, right? People want to see stuff that's entertaining first. That's the number one. 46% said that they want to see material that's entertaining. So question for you is your content entertaining? It's probably a bigger question in the B2B space because we see that often in the B2C space, but not always in B2B. And then 45%, right behind that entertaining number, 45% said that they wanted to see technical or instructional information. And presumably the best combination here is when you combine the two of those, entertaining as well as instructional. So we're going to take a look at a couple of these and I'll explain them afterwards. So here's a video from John Deere, if you don't mind rolling that.
Good things come to those who wait. Meet the new 9RX Series tractor from John Deere. The perfect combination of power, technology, and agility wrapped up in a 4-track. The new 9RX is about innovation, not imitation. And it starts with the right balance of power and performance, made smarter by the latest technology. With models from 470 to 620 engine horsepower, proven final Tier 4 engine technology, and a hydraulic flow of 115 gallons per minute. The 9RX is built to cover large acres and pull big implements with accuracy and efficiency, helping you extend your window and improve yield potential and profitability pass after pass. The 9RX uses a positive drive undercarriage system to effectively transfer the engine power, allowing you to maintain traction in a turn and under load. The robust design of the drivetrain and undercarriage is unique to the 9RX. How robust and how unique? The upswept axle component is the largest cast part poured in the nation. It also provides the ability to have a larger drive wheel, increasing reliability and putting more power to the ground. The 9RX's exclusive track design adds to its superior performance. The mid-rollers keep the track belts in contact with the terrain over the entire length of the undercarriage. The spacing of the mid-rollers also helps prevent vibration during transport and in the field. The front idler is raised slightly higher than the two mid-rollers, allowing the tractor to climb over obstacles while maintaining maximum ground contact and optimal weight distribution. The larger articulated footprint allows for additional traction and more flotation.
I wanted to give you some sense of it, right? You have to let it roll for just a little bit. Clearly, a pretty technical video, right? Well produced, obviously, but they get into a lot of detail around that. Anyone have a sense of how many views it's had on YouTube? It's been out for a month. Not quite a million. About a third of that, so 300,000 views in a month. Pretty interesting though, because this is a very targeted video, right? This is not obviously something that you're going to blast out and be broadly hit a ton of people. But 300,000 for this type of audience, pretty interesting, right? I think they do a nice job of hitting that technical side, maybe providing a little bit of entertainment along the way. Let's take a look at a different space. This is from the tech space. And this is a video from Citrix. Some of you may have seen this. It came out earlier this year. So if you wouldn't mind rolling this one.
Again, I'm reporting live from downtown. There's a zombie outbreak. Stay inside.
Yeah, pretty good, especially with Halloween coming up. Quick, punchy. Obviously, this lends more, goes more towards the entertaining side, not technical at all. Really well received, though. So this video had, I think, 8.5 million hits on YouTube. When you look at the other impact, though, it had a 22% increase in consideration for Citrix, for GoToMeeting. It had a 50% increase in brand perception and something like an 80% increase in brand recall. Right? That is the impact that that type of video has in this overall space. And you can use the tools that we talked about to show some of that measurement. So index is high on the entertaining side. Let's take a look at another one. This is from Boeing. That's good. Thank you. So obviously, this is a decent mix of combining some of the technical and the entertaining. They don't really talk about the technical aspects, but just by the demonstration that they have, that you get a sense that the 787, the Dreamliner, has pretty strong performance. Interesting part about this one, they launched it, so in the aviation space, they hold a big air show every year. It alternates between Farnborough, England, and Paris. This year it was in Paris. Boeing put this out the week before the Paris Air Show. They got about 12.5 million hits to it in about a 10-day span. So wildly popular. It's actually a little bit of back and forth because Airbus did the same thing last year and had they showed us one of their new planes doing an interesting flying formation. So we've got a little bit of a digital battle going on here. The other interesting part about this is that it was shared a ton. So this video was shared 31,000 times. And that's one of these interesting parts about the influence component and how things have changed from desktop to mobile. Now, certainly people are still viewing video on desktop, but mobile makes it maybe even more, or it makes it easier to be able to share it, to receive it, and to watch it very quickly, right? In this instance, it was shared, like I mentioned, 31,000 times. Boeing got a lot of good press off of it also. So it helps to inform kind of the image of the company. Boeing, though, is doing some other different things in video, and we wanted to show you just something to maybe contrast that, right? Because this is a good demonstration of their overall technology in using airplanes. But let's run the next one and show you some differences about what they're doing here.
We were able to make the world's lightest material. The entire structure was basically 99.99% air. The microlattice is a 3D open cellular polymer structure and can often be compared to something like a bone structure. In your bone structures, the outside of your bone is very rigid But on the inside, it's actually mostly hollow, where you basically have an open cellular structure, so they aren't easily crushed, yet lightweight at the same time. If you want to look at just properties in general, then one would be compression in the sense of energy absorption, and then the second would be lightweight in terms of having very hollow tubes. So let's say you have the egg drop challenge that a lot of students have in school, and they need to drop an egg from 25 stories and protect that egg. They would probably wrap it in many, many layers of bubble wrap and then drop it and hope for the best. But what we can do is back design the microlattice to absorb the force that the egg feels. So instead of having an egg that's wrapped in 3 feet of bubble wrap, now you have a much smaller package that your egg can sit in. One of the main applications that we've been looking into is structural components or aerospace. So when I get on an airplane and I'm leaning against the sidewall panel, I'm putting my luggage in the stow bin, or I'm walking along the floor panels, I think, the microlattice could be used in one of these applications. In the future, the material could help Boeing to save a lot of weight, to make the airplanes more fuel efficient. It's really exciting to be able to work with things that we make that can eventually go into a real product that a lot of users can interact with.
So thank you. So pretty interesting, right? That's very different than the video you just saw with the airplane taking off. And it probably leans a little bit more towards the technical, but has a subtle sense of entertainment, well produced, et cetera. That's been out for 2 weeks. It has 2.5 million hits already. So to give you a sense, you can do different things with video to hit both that entertaining component as well as the technical component. So we'd encourage you to think through again as you think about your plans for next year. What could you do in a way that uses any of these type of techniques, right? Something that's very entertaining, like the Citrix ad, something that blends it, like this last Boeing ad, between entertaining and technical, to be able to get your message out, because video is on the rise. We saw that last year in our research with that increase to 70% of B2B buyers using video in the buying path. Mobile is just going to continue to fuel that, because mobile is where the consumption takes place. The final point here is that if you make good content, just like that Boeing, that first Boeing video, it becomes shareable. But sharing is also how people receive. So 43% of B2B buyers said that they viewed a video because it was shared with them. So just think about that. That's very different than the world that we were living in even 4 years ago, when people were just coming online and using desktop as their principal form. So our challenge to you is, how do you think about video combined with mobile to be able to get your message out? Now, similarly to what we've shared earlier, there's a lot of information that you can use to be able to determine the efficacy of these type of campaigns, right? Now, this is a snapshot of some of the sharing that happens with a given video, so you can get some sense of the spike. When people share, they do it not only daily, so 35% of people in the B2B space are sharing a video daily. About 2/3, or about 67%, are sharing one monthly. Just to give you some sense, this is not just a phenomenon that's isolated just to a few videos. It's starting to take off in the overall B2B space. So the question is, how are you making your content? Is it shareable? Not all B2B videos are, but we'd encourage you to think about how you make that content so that it does, people want to pick it up, share it, and then people want to consume it on the back end. And finally, just on the measurement side, there are a ton of tools out there. We offer one that's called Brand Lift. It basically gives you a deep set of surveys that you can run to be able to get a sense of what that impact is with a video. This is just a snapshot of one of them. You can get a sense of what the impact is on a particular age group, on a demo, and across a whole set of other categories. I referenced some of the results that Citrix saw with their video. So as you're going down this path, make sure that you're up to speed on those tools, that you understand what measures you want to try to get a gauge on. It might not all be about direct response or last click as it relates to video. It might be some of those other things in terms of brand consideration or ad recall or overall brand lift. So with that, we just pause here to say, mobile has changed, right? That 82% of people that are now multi-screen is going to have a big impact as we go into the next year. We'd ask you to think about how you are considering how they're discovering you when mobile is inserted into that buying path, because it's changed, how they're doing some of the deeper research, because how they do that has also changed. And finally, what are you thinking about for video and the level of influence it can have in the overall buying path? And as you think about your plans for next year, how are you going to shape them around some of this science, as Jay called it earlier, but also combine it with some of the sense about where you need to take your overall business. So with that, we've got about 5 minutes left for any questions that you might have. Yes, and I'll repeat. We've got a microphone going around.
So you broke the market into two segments, desktop and mobile. Where does tablet fall into that? Is tablet in mobile, or is it in desktop, or is it a third discrete category?
So for us, let me actually ask, for Millward Brown, do you guys include tablet in?
They're all separate.
They're all separate, yeah. So for the Millward Brown study, it is separate. When you look at Google data, tablet will be folded into desktop. So that is one nuance, is that whether you're looking at our research or someone else's, you may have to ask that question about where it falls. So you would have seen a mixture of that if we had data in here that was Google specific. Tablet would have gone in. So some of that search data that you saw in the moments, tablet would have been folded in to the desktop component. For the other components on Millward Brown, tablet is broken out separately. I will say this, tablet traffic overall for us, we do not see that big. So we actually left it off of some of the slides because it was relatively small. Other questions? Oh, sorry.
So what are some ways that you recommend tracking some of the dark social sharing that happens with video?
The dark social sharing? I don't know if we've got, you've got great tools within both Google Analytics and then also within AdWords. I think one thing, I didn't mention this earlier, one thing to note, and it is important, is that if you're able to link your AdWords and YouTube accounts, you get extra benefit, right? Because you can do a whole set of capturing of data, remarketing, et cetera. In terms of the dark social piece, I don't know if we've got great tools to be able to find that type of traffic right now. But this is an area that we're investing in, and I know others are, so more to come. And we've got some sessions, some breakouts later today that will go deeper on some of these measurement tools. Maybe one more question if you have it. Over here.
So my question is, do you see in future that mobile and desktop are going to be completely separately dealt with, especially in terms of the platforms and tools that Google offers? Currently, they're kind of like together.
Yeah. So will we see them separate? I don't think so. I think we're going to continue to see them. Right now we offer tools to help you get a sense of what happens on desktop and what happens on mobile. If anything, we'd probably see them continue to come back together, right? At least in the B2B space, I just reiterate, in different areas, and you'll read about this more in the popular press, you'll see that mobile is the predominant place that people are conducting business. We don't yet see that in B2B, right? Our search volumes are still below 50%. We published a stat earlier this year that was in the B2B space, 42% of searches in general B2B categories come from mobile. So it's a more equal share at this point than it has been in past years. But what we do think is that the user behavior has modified right now, and that's the big thing to pay attention to, right? If that mobile type moment that we talked about earlier is going to be different on a mobile device, you want to think about how you're tailoring that message. Our goal, though, is to be able to make sure that you're offering something consistent and that the tools allow you to get one message out in a good way across multiple devices, yet to be able to measure across each in an effective manner. Terrific. Well, I will be around later today over lunch if you have any further questions. Thank you, and I'll hand it back to Jay.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Wow, a lot of takeaways. I don't know about you, but I want to buy a 9RX. Right? Was that not an impressive tractor? That was amazing. I'm not a farmer. I don't do any of that, but That was pretty cool. I think a few things that I took away from that session, and by the way, your account teams will have all this information, right? So this is all fresh off of the press, if you will, and available for you guys. So to look at different vertical levels, to look at it in different ways, we'll have those cuts. But in 4 years, I think you've made a huge we've come a long way, right? To my earlier point, when you look at the Boeing example, I love the technical piece about the John Deere, right, the 9RX, but at the same time, Citrix and bringing entertainment into it. So to Mike's point, technical yet entertaining, done two very different ways. I think Boeing, what was it, 12.5 million hits, Mike said, right? With 31,000 shares of an airplane video. I mean, that's just great work, right? That's sharing. That's wonderful to see your investment, if you will, extended. A couple things that were surprising to me is that for mobile, 74% of the queries are non-brand, right? So more so than desktop. I mean, for me, intuitively in the beginning was like, okay, brand, like, you know, smaller amounts, smaller words in a query in a string. But to see that 74% was there was huge. And mobile peaks at 9:30 at night. Right? Like, who would have thunk that? When you think about day parting, you think about your strategies, you look at where we showed the examples, you know, those people might have been in more shallow auctions at that time of night and winning basically exposure at times that you might not even think were necessarily there to be on. And that mobile video viewers, 64% of them are influenceable. So it's not done. Right? They're not watching, they've decided, boom, but you have an opportunity to insert yourself into that conversation, kind of what I mentioned earlier in the day, to make sure that you're present and you're making sure that your brand is being considered by these users. So great job, I think, as always, from Mike. That study will be now readily available to everybody. And I'd like to welcome Sunny Byers up, and she's going to talk to us about my ad personally in one of our mini TED Talks. So, Sunny, come on up. And would you like the mic?
Hey everybody, how you doing? Good morning. So today we're talking a lot about personalization in our creative advertising, what that looks like once the creative rolls out. So I thought it'd be kind of fun today to kind of look at the attributes of myself as a user and how that could be used for B2B creative. So first of all, my name is Sunny Byers. I'm a creative account executive at Google, so I work with a lot of different creative agencies. But I live in the city of Chicago, my favorite place on earth. I've been there for about 20 years. But more specifically, I live in the West Loop in Chicago. Actually, it's the 5th fastest growing neighborhood in America. And it's actually home to the new Google in Chicago. I just turned 40 this year. Do we have any fresh 40-year-old folks in the house? Am I the oldest one here again? No? All right. I have 2 cats. I have Feather Fox and Saffron. They're the loves of my life. Some people might think this is why I'm still single at age 40. I work at Google. This is my favorite Google doodle. But I've been a tap dancer for 17 years. I used to teach as well. With my free time, I do a lot of volunteering at animal shelters, but I find nothing wrong with wearing some fur. I don't care about sports. I think I might have heard a blip that the Chicago Cubs lost last night, but I didn't know if that was football or baseball. So I don't really care about sports, but I do really love playing online video games, specifically from the 80s. I believe children are our future, but I don't have any. I travel all the time and like rack up the points with some of these amazing affiliates. But finally, when I get home at the end of the day, it's me and my boyfriend on the couch. All of this to say that I hate Taylor Swift. I hate her. I hate her. So why am I being served this kind of creative? These are actual real ads that come to me via any website I go to. I can't have children, yet I'm being served baby creative, trying to get an offer. I don't like Taylor Swift, but I'm getting something in her own words. And really, like, shaving cream creative? Really, Nivea? Is it that obvious? But I'm not alone. 75% of us out there, the consumer, gets really frustrated when they're being served advertising that, you know, has nothing to do with their goals, whether it's in the job or in life. So if they get frustrated, if they even get angry and take it personally, and it has nothing to do with their interests, they're never going to click on it. And an ad that's never clicked on is an ad that never happened. So we live in this new time where everything is programmatic. To get the real value of the programmatic, you have to really take a look at your creative messaging. Through the programmatic pipes, we now have like all these wonderful, audience segments. We learn so much more about how we're buying, where we're buying. But how does that look creatively? We really have to look at the goals of our campaign. Without the right message, all this programmatic stuff won't even matter. So among the best in-class B2B marketers, 75% tailor the content to the profile of the decision maker. Some of you in this room do a lot of this already. How do we do this? We do this through dynamic. One ad generating thousands of different messages. You're able to, swap out your copy, swap out your image, your call to action, your logo, the videos, the color of the ad. These are small little things that you can really help tailor your message. So you're able to build one ad with thousands of different versions to it and traffic that ad just once. So that is an amazing, not only cost savings, but you're able to really speak to what your companies are, who your targets, and engage with them for what they really need. So how do we do this? How do you deliver and engage and target that right user in that moment? Well, there's a lot of different things in the pipes, whether it's in the ad server or whether it's the programmatic buy, that we can use as triggers to swap out those messages depending on who that person is. For instance, somebody may be walking past the brick and mortar store. Boom, send them that message. Make sure that there's a map, show them the special, whatever the case may be. A lot of times big opportunities are advertising during the Super Bowl. There could be a play being made on the field, and you could talk about it in your ad. A couple of years ago, we did something with Coca-Cola around the Super Bowl, where anytime there was like a fumble or a touchdown, we kind of mentioned that and said, yay, right in the creative, right in the moment. That was one of the most successful campaigns we've ever had. And not only that, but you learn more about your users too through the data you collect by doing that dynamic campaign. You're able to track, did the ad take them to the site? Did they sign up for the offer? Did they purchase what was in their cart? How long did they engage with the ad? Did they share the ad? So you're able to accrue this data, look at this data, and have that data inform you for your next campaign. So we see all of the biggest companies in the world really taking personalization very, very seriously. You've probably just actually witnessed this as you went to these different sites. So this is very, very important. I'm more apt to take on a recommendation from someone who's just like me over, Hollywood Reporter or Fandango or, something that tells me I should like it. So being able to personalize what you share with others is one of the most important drivers. So you can do all of this today. We see a lot of our best brands doing this, and I wanted to point out some clever ways real quick. We wanted to point out Edward Jones here. There was a partnership that they had with Bon Appetit magazine. Let me just get this a little bit bigger. So we're looking at a format that is rich media, but at a different size, which is a rising star, kind of format that more people are apt to click on because it's a little different. But being able to partner with Bon Appetit and say, hey, being selective is important. Here are some recipes that kind of showcase some of the best and brightest from Bon Appetit magazine. But then further, you can learn how Edward Jones also supports that kind of sharing and the ingredients of their packages and the way that they curtailed that to every different user, depending on a recipe, depending on what their needs were, like having an understanding of their browser histories and behaviors. That's the reason why they were able to serve the different, whether it was a recipe or being able to share a testimonial. It all came down to the user. Even very simply put, FedEx did a very great campaign recently. Sorry, I just lost it. It's very simple, and it's all about messaging. There's different things that you can say clearly, but like having the ability to have many different campaigns in one saves you time. It saves you money. It lets you focus on other initiatives that are able to help the cause. Looks like there's a. So between one message serving to another. Making sure that right brand or that right company or that right person makes sense of what you're trying to say and actually clicks on it and generates an experience. So all in all, when it comes down to it, the kind of advertising that I would be clicking on at the end of the day would look like something like this. Something that, lets me know the time and the temp, something useful for me, saying, pointing out where I am in the city that I love, actually serving me something I would literally buy, tons of different costumes and leotards and, outfits for my tap dancing troupe, which is something that I have to do once or twice a year. So this is kind of the effective advertising that I would absolutely be clicking on and probably be spending a lot of money with. So, there's a couple of great things that we can do to tailor that message, and it's really not that difficult. And it's with the tools that exist in your cache right now. So, yes, if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. But that's how we personalize our B2B creative. Thanks.